Hello, it's me named Jenny Lee. Welcome back for another raw book discussion of session 17. So this will be video 18. And this one is rather long, like yesterday's. So let's get started. Okay, so here is where Ra discovers that they made a mistake about the years. Earlier they said it was 2,600 and 2,300, and they realized it was 3,600 and 3,300. So we talked about that already. So next. So Dawn says, we are now in the fourth density. Will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in our environment and our effect upon our environment? So remember, this is 1981, so 30 years. If he's asking about 30 years, that means he's thinking about like 2011. The fourth density is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your solar system. Remember, they're saying, using the word galaxy, but they mean solar system. What you call your star into this vibration. So our spiraling energy has taken us to the fourth dimension physically. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vortices of reception of the instreaming of cosmic forces, expressing themselves as vibrational webs, so that the Earth will thus be fourth density magnetized. So it sounds like it going into this fourth density realm physically, that the physical electromagnetic points of the Earth have to realign themselves. This is going to occur with some inconvenience due to the energies of the thought forms of your people, which disturb the orderly constructs of energy patterns within the Earth's spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusual heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment. I love the way they said that. Ruptures in your outer garment. It sounds like somebody had an accident. While making itself appropriately magnetized for fourth density, this is the planetary adjustment. So it sounds like volcanic eruption. I don't know. Let's see. How many volcanic eruptions have we had since 1981? How many volcanic eruptions since 1981? Okay, what was erupting in each year? The Global Volcanism Program. Okay. Ooh, this is interesting. We could spend all day on this website. Okay. Let's look at the total eruptions. So it goes back as far as 1960. So it looks like the average between 1960 and 1980, well, let's say 79. The rough average of volcanic eruptions between 1960 and 1979 were between 50 and 70, with 73 in the year 1977. But then in 1980, there's 74. In 1986, there's 73. 1999, there was 70. Then okay, so here's an increase. Oh yeah, okay. So it's pretty even all the way through, between 50 and like 75. But then there's a 3-year span where it's So in 99, there's 70. 2000, there's 75. 2001, there's 71. And 2002, there's 74. So actually, that's 4 years. Then in 2004, there was 81. That's a big jump. And then we had a bunch of years where it was 80s. 2004, 81. 2005, 83. 2006, 86. 2007, 81. 2008, 86. And then it's like the average for eruptions starting in the year 2004, instead of it being 50 to 75, it jumps to between 75 and 86. No, between 75 and 90. Starting in 2004. So yes, it took a little while longer, which, you know, to them, their time is like, wow. So every year since 2004, there's been between 75 and 90. Like the highest year so far was 2015, and that was 88. But it's never gone back down below 70. Actually, it's, 73 in 2020. That's the lowest. I guess they weren't lying. That's a lot of damn volcanic eruptions. Wow. Now I wonder what the percentage of those is based on where we know our electromagnetic vortices are. That would be for someone else to look up. Wow. Okay. Who knew? You will find a sharp increase in the number of people, as you call mind-body-spirit complexes, whose vibrational potentials include the potential for fourth vibrational distortions. Thus, there will seem to be, shall we say, a new breed. These are those incarnating for fourth density work. So it seems like anybody born around that time or after is incarnated for the fourth density work. Good to know. There will be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized people or social complexes due to the polarizing conditions of this sharp delineation towards fourth dimension characteristics and third dimension self-service orientation. So unfortunately, because there's going to be more people one way, there's got to be more people the other too. It's a balancing act. Those who remain in fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all the best efforts of the Confederation, which include those from peoples in inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than that which this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. So those who remain in fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. So if anybody makes it to fourth density, they're going to be positive, service to others. But there's still going to be a lot of people who don't make it to the fourth density. All right. Is it possible for an entity to reach fourth density in the last days before the harvest? It's impossible to help another being directly. The most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with Creator from the self. Less important being information such as we share with you. So people have to realize it themselves, and that's kind of impossible with no time left. We don't feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It's enough that we made it available to 3 or 4 or 5. This is This is extremely ample reward for if one of these obtains fourth density understanding due to the catalyst that we shall have fulfilled the law of one in the distortion of service. So Ra just said it doesn't matter how many people this information reaches. If even one person reaches fourth density, they did their job. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share the information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available in your term, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. Because if somebody's moving up, they're helping everybody else. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self for the self. Another self cannot teach, learn enlightenment, but only teach, learn information, inspiration, and a sharing of love, of mystery of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in the moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? I thought that was really beautiful. So this came up in a previous session quite a while ago about that mystery. Remember, the universe uses mystery to make us curious so that we reach out and we start seeking the information of our own. And you can't open intelligent infinity for someone else. They have to do it themselves. But you can teach, learn the information, use inspiration, share your love, and create that mystery for others. It's wonderful. Okay, this is very, very interesting information. And as usual, Dawn switches gears very quickly. You know, they talk about this at the very beginning of like the introduction, how they would sit together and like write down all the questions they wanted to ask. So it's clearly like, you know, it's kind of almost like stream of consciousness questions, and that's how they come out. So it's like they're just switching gears so quickly. So because now now for something completely different. Okay. Dawn asks Ra about this crater in Russia that's in Tunguska. I had never heard about this before, so I looked it up. And in 1908, a 12 megaton explosion happened near a river in Russia in a place called Tunguska. All right, a 12 megaton explosion. Okay. Ra says it was the destruction of a fission reactor that caused the crater. Whose reactor was it? It was a drone sent by the Confederation which malfunctioned. It was moved to an area where its destruction could not cause infringement upon the will of people, and it was detonated. So historically, in 1908, it's a 12 megaton explosion. Nobody died, and there were very few damages. It just knocked a whole bunch of trees down, and it had a little bit of damage to some buildings. So what Ross says here is true. It was placed in a spot where it wasn't going to cause anybody any harm. So the scientific theory is that a celestial body, as in an asteroid or a meteor or a comet or something, exploded before it hit the ground. Is it just me, or will scientific people come up with any frickin' thing they can possibly think of to discredit any mysterious unknown stuff? When has there ever been a meteor, a comet, an asteroid that exploded, a 12 megaton explosion, before it hit the ground? And do you know what their reasoning behind it is? They said that due to its cold nature of coming from outer space, that as it heated up and it got closer to the ground, that the rapid heat caused it to explode. Who came up with that shit? Seriously. It got so hot that it blew up before it hit the ground. It would have had to have had some sort of element in it that was flammable, which I guess is not impossible. Man. No. Everything we know about asteroids, comets, whatever that might come out of the sky and hit the ground, if it was that freaking big or that powerful, it would have caused an unimaginable amount of destruction. And it didn't. It didn't because it exploded before it hit the ground. If it would have hit the ground for probably miles and miles, it would have caused problems. And then it probably would have caused a lot of crap to go up in the air and cause even more problems. What was its purpose for coming here? It was a drone designed to listen to various signals of your peoples. At the time, we were beginning work in a more technical sphere. We were interested in determining the extent of the rapidity of your advances. The drone was powered by a simple fusion motor or engine, not of the type of which you know, and very small. However, it has the same destructive effect upon third density stuff. It malfunctioned, so we picked the best place for it to blow up rather than attempt to retrieve it. And for the possibility and probability was very minute. Was it danger, both blast and radiation? There was very little radiation, which is localized to the trees, and it did not drift in the wind. So, yes. Which they had, Dawn knew that there was low radiation levels in the trees. So that must have been something that was known to the public at the time. Then was the Confederation responsible for Earth receiving nuclear power? It is a point which one cannot judge what is caused. The basic equation which preceded this work was an equation brought through by a wanderer dedicated to service to the planet. That this work should become foundation for instruments of destruction was not intended and was not given. Who was it? Albert. Good old Albert Einstein, which we know that Albert Einstein's theories is what caused us to have nuclear power. But he never intended for it to cause nuclear destruction. I think we knew that already, but Ra's saying also that he was a wanderer, which, remember, a wanderer is a 5th or 6th density being that decides to come back to a 3rd density place to help people in some way. Okay, now Dawn asks about Jesus, and stuff gets really, really interesting. The one known as Jesus of Nazareth did not have a name before he incarnated on Earth. This entity was a member of the 5th density, but Ra corrects it in the next answer, and he's actually the highest sublevel of 4th density at the time that he was incarnated. The entity entered the planetary sphere in order to share the love vibration in as pure a manner as possible. So it received permission to perform this mission. And repeats, the wanderer had no name. So Jesus was the highest sublevel 4th density, came here to spread love. And this is where he corrects himself. 4th density. This entity could have gone on to the 5th, but chose instead to return to the 3rd for this particular mission. This entity was of the highest suboctave of the vibration of love in the 4th density. So Jesus could have moved up to fifth density, but decided to come back to the third. When I'm communicating with you as Ra, are you at times an individualized entity? Or am I speaking to the entire complex? There's no separation. You would call it a social memory complex, thus indicating mineness. To our understanding, you are speaking to an individualized portion of consciousness. So it sounds like yes and no, or just yes. Do I always speak to the same individualized portion of consciousness? And then everything that Ross says here is really just talking about Carla, which is not really what Dawn asked. So I think it's just like a miscommunication. So it's confusing. And I think that Ra means that Ra is an individualized portion of consciousness, and that Dawn is talking to like the whole group because they are a whole group. Okay. So Dawn's next question. People of this planet following any religion or no religion, having no intellectual knowledge of the law of one, can still be harvested into fourth density, correct? Correct. However, you will find few are harvestable whose radiance does not cause others to be aware of their spirituality. Very interesting. The quality of the people's distortion of the spirituality. Thus, it's not particularly probable that an entity would be completely unknown to his immediate acquaintances as an unusually radiant personality, even with this individual not caught up in any of the distortions of the so-called religious systems. And then you can see I wrote, yay. You don't have to be part of any earthly religious systems to be a spiritual entity that can reach a higher density. Thank you, Ra. Thank you. That made my whole freaking year. So now we're going back to Jesus. When Jesus incarnated, was there an attempt by the Orion group to discredit him? Yes. Can you tell me what the Orion group did in order to cause his downfall? The technique was the building upon our negatively oriented information. This information had been given by one whom your peoples called Yahweh. So remember, Yahweh came up in the last session. Yahweh is known as the Hebrew word for God, but previously in the Hebrew history, before monotheism, they believed in many gods, and in the Hebrew history, the Yahweh God was associated with weather and war. And the next session that I read today gets really, really confusing about Yahweh. And I'm not going to go over it right now. I'll keep it for tomorrow. But there's some really confusing stuff, because so far, Ra made it sound like Yahweh was part of the Orion group. That's what happened in the last session. And here that would also suggest that he was, or it was, because Yahweh was giving negative information that helped bring the downfall of Jesus. But you just wait until tomorrow when Yahweh comes up again. And now I don't know what the heck to think about this entity, but let's continue. This information involved many strictures upon behavior and promised power of the third density service to self nature. These two types of distortions were pressed upon those already oriented to think these thought forms. So strictures upon behavior, like controlling what people can think or do, and promised power. This eventually led to many challenges for Jesus. And Judas, who believed he was doing the appropriate thing, brought about enforcing upon the one called Jesus the necessity for bringing in the third density planetary distortion of the third density rule over others. So I found this very, very interesting, this little part. Judas thought he was doing the right thing. And I don't know how many times I have said that about people since the COVID pandemic happened. And there's been this very high distinction between groups of people in the world, particularly in the United States. And I really do feel like both sides feel like they're doing the right thing. They really do, you know? The majority of them. Are there jerks that are, purposefully doing stuff that's bad? Of course, there always is. But the majority of people, I really do believe, are good people, and they think that they're doing the right thing. And they don't see it because of their own distortions and getting caught up in things. And that's exactly what happens to Judas. He thought he was doing the right thing. There was a pressure from the outside to follow the rules, and he thought he was doing the right thing. And it ends up that he goes down in history as one of the worst backstabbers ever. So, think about that for a little bit. Okay. This entity, Judas, felt that if pushed into a corner, the entity would call Jesus, that you call Jesus, would then be able to see the wisdom of using the power of intelligent infinity to rule others. The one you call Judas was mistaken in his estimation, for the reaction of Jesus was learning was not oriented toward this distortion. This resulted in the destruction of Jesus. So Judas thought, because Jesus was so powerful, that he was going to use it against others. And in turn, Judas used it against Jesus. Craziness. Okay. All right. If Jesus was fourth density, and there are wanderers on the planet today who come from fifth and sixth, what was it that Jesus did to enable him as such a good healer? And could these fifth, sixth density beings here do the same thing? Those who heal may be of any density, which has the consciousness of spirit. This includes third, fourth, fifth, and sixth and seventh. The third density can be one in which healing takes place just as the others. However, there's more illusory material to understand, to accept, to balance, and to move forward from. I just want to say real quick that my teenager is up, and he's talking to his friend on the computer, and he's getting kind of loud, and you might be able to hear it, and I apologize, but I'm in the middle of this, and I can't get up and move somewhere else, nor is there anywhere else to go. So if you hear him talking really loudly or cackling, I'm sorry. So anybody that's third density or up can heal if they have a consciousness of spirit. But if you're third density, it's a little bit harder. Excellent. The gate to infinite intelligent infinity can only be opened when an understanding of the in-streaming of intelligent energy are opened upon the healer. These are the so-called natural laws of your local space-time continuum and its web of electromagnetic sources or nexi of in-streaming energy. So you got to have the gateway open to the infinite intelligence and understand how it works. Know then first the mind and the body, then the spirit is integrated, synthesized, and harmonized, and can move along the dimensions of which can open the gateway to intelligent infinity, healing self by light and sharing that light with others. So you got to get all your stuff together, make sure you're aligned and synthesized, and you're understanding it all. And then you can heal yourself and others by using light. And there are a lot of people doing that in this world right now, and it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. True healing is simply the radiance of the self, causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur which initiates the recognition of self by self of the self-healing properties of the self. Raw, that was a lot of selves in one sentence. Good Lord, my dear. Okay. You're radiating your own infinite intelligence out into the environment, which is going to heal yourself, but can also heal others, because healing yourself heals others, and you can also literally help heal others. How did Jesus learn how to do this? Okay, so before we go any further, don't look yet. Talking about religious figures' historical lives can bring up a lot of crap, because people feel like they know everything and they're not willing to accept any other variations of the storyline. But so have an open mind, particularly if you are Christian or grew up as a Christian, because this might change things, and you don't have to believe it or think that it's true, but man, does it make sense. Okay. The entity learned the ability by a natural kind of remembering at a young age. Okay, friends, brace yourself, put your seatbelt on, because some of y'all might get triggered, okay? Okay. Unfortunately, this entity first discovered his ability to penetrate intelligent infinity by becoming the distortion you call angry at a playmate. This entity was touched by the entity, Jesus, and was fatally wounded. Thus, the one known as Jesus became aware that there dwelt in him a terrible potential. This entity determined to discover how to use this energy for good and not for negative. This entity was extremely positively polarized and remembered more than most wanderers do. Notice that I wrote down trauma. This is a widely known thing with people who become awakened to their own spiritualness and have abilities that they can't explain. There's a common thread that runs through them all, and that there's some kind of trauma that happens early in life. Usually, not always, sometimes it happens later, but a lot of it happens in childhood. And Ra says this entity learned the ability by a natural kind of remembering. A natural kind of remembering. When we experience trauma, no matter what the trauma is, and it could be any level or scale of trauma, nobody's trauma is worse than somebody else's trauma. Nobody's trauma is less than anybody else's trauma. It's all freaking trauma. It can make things click in you to get the wheels turning, to get you going down some path where you have to start trying to figure out things about yourself that other people that have not experienced trauma might never have been led down that path. So many people that would hear this information that Jesus accidentally killed somebody would lose their minds because that is not possible in their scheme of reality of what they think they know about Jesus. But to me, this makes complete, perfect sense, because trauma is the trigger for the spiritual awakening. And even Jesus had to go through it. Doesn't that just make him so much more relatable? Like, I've never been religious. I didn't grow up in a Christian household. I'm not, there's been times in my life where I very much negatively thought things about Christianity and to be honest, even Jesus, because it's what's associated with Christianity. And I'll be honest about that. But as my spiritualness opens more and more and more, I have to, for me personally, I have to disassociate. I have to disassociate Jesus with what Christianity has become. Because Jesus was a real person. Jesus had a real life. Jesus went through some terrible stuff. Jesus was trying to teach everybody love in a pure manner. And of course, humans completely screwed it up. as usual, because that's what we do best, we got screwed all up. And instead of loving each other, we use the words of the texts against each other, which is not what Jesus wanted, ever, ever. And I'm going to tell you right now, and some of y'all might think that I'm crazy wacko woo-woo. Go ahead. But we're being real open and honest with these book discussions. And in the next session that I read this morning, there was something about sharing what you've learned with others. This is what I'm going to tell you. Are you ready? I have seen Jesus. And I know there's a lot of other spiritual people, woo-woo weirdos, that also have, and to a much greater extent than I have. I was meditating in what is called a sitting in the power exercise. And all of a sudden, I saw a big building with stairs and columns. Imagine like a Greek style building. And there was a very, very bright light emanating from the open doors of this building. And I'm like standing at the bottom of the stairs. And a figure walks out the door and starts walking towards me down the steps. And it's Jesus. And I can't see the details of his front, like his face and his body, but he had the long hair. I could tell he had some kind of facial hair. He was wearing a robe type of thing because he was walking down the stairs with his arms out, like in his typical pose that we know him of. And that's one of the reasons why I recognized him, because I was like, he's got his arms out. That's Jesus. But his robe was so full that it caused like a drape under his arms, And now that I've been reading this, the fact that he came through in this really, really bright light makes a lot of sense. Because when he incarnated on Earth, he could have moved up to the fifth density, which is light and wisdom. But he chose to come back and try to help. And seeing him now, it's like he did. He moved up to the fifth density. And now he's in the light and the wisdom. It was crazy. And it was beautiful. And I felt honored that he showed himself to me. So y'all can do whatever you want to do with Jesus. That's free will. The law of confusion. Free will. But I know what I feel. And what was just described in the book about Jesus experiencing a trauma that's going to lead him down a path to discovering his own spiritualness that he forgot coming into incarnation, that he knew before he decided to come here, is just what feels right to me. Let's continue. How did this aggressive action against the playmate affect Jesus and his spiritual growth? And where did he go after physical death? The entity, Jesus, was galvanized by this experience and began a lifetime of seeking and searching. This entity studied first day and night his own religious constructs you call Judaism. So he studied everything he could about the religion of his own people that he had incarnated into, and learned enough to become a rabbi, as you call the teach learners of this particular rhythm of distortion of understanding at a very young age. Then at 13 and 1/2 years, 13 and 1/2 years, so 13 and a half, he left home of his earthly family, and he walked to many other places seeking further information. Now, it doesn't say where he goes. That's still a mystery. This went on sporadically until he was 25. So all this is historically documented, you know. Then he returns to his family and learns the practice of his father, how to be a carpenter, right? When the entity had become able to integrate and synthesize all experiences, the entity began to speak to others and learn what he felt during the preceding years of the work to be of a worthwhile nature. So once he felt like he had understood it, he started sharing his experiences. The entity was absolved karmically of the destruction of the other self when it was in its last portion of lifetime, and spoke upon what you would call the cross, saying, "Father, forgive me, they know not what they do." In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of action, or what you call karma. So there is, so, you know, Christianity and Catholicism has some of it right here, that you can ask for forgiveness and be forgiven of your sins or your karma. You can be absolved of your karma. But I think there's more to it than just asking for forgiveness. But we won't get into all of that right now. Which density does the entity Jesus now reside? The fifth density, light. Wisdom and light. I saw him in the light. I saw him in the brightest light without being blinded. Yes. Okay. That just validated my personal experience. And I just saw 4141, which I don't even know if that's an angel number, but it's two numbers that are the same. So thank you. Thank you. Okay. In our culture, there's a great saying that he will return. Can you tell me this as explained? Okay. I will attempt to sort out this question. It's difficult. The entity became aware that it was not an entity of itself, but operated as a messenger of the one creator, love. Jesus saw it as love. The entity was aware that this cycle was in its last portion and spoke to the effect that those of the consciousness would return at the harvest. So we're talking about harvesting, like not physically coming back to Earth, but coming back to take those that have passed. Jesus would not return except as a member of the Confederation, occasionally speaking through a channel. However, there were others of the identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those of the fourth density. This is the meaning of returning. Not that Jesus would physically come back into a body, but Jesus would help people cross over into the fourth density. So then I wrote this. Is this the misconception of having to wait for Jesus? But it's just the harvest from third to fourth, which there's all kinds of misconceptions about that people are having to like be in purgatory and all this other horse shit. And like maybe it does feel like purgatory if you're having to wait in the inner planes. I don't know. But yeah, Jesus ain't coming back in a body. Jesus is going to help you move when there's a harvest. That makes a lot more sense. Can you tell me why the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of negative, since it seems to be a greater negative population? The Earth seems to be negative. This is due to the, this is sadly correct. This is due to the quiet horror, which is a common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences in your present space-time. The good people are quietly in a sense of horror over what's happening and what people are willing to do to each other. However, those oriented and harvestful in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation toward the service of self has become that of a harvestable quality. Isn't that good to hear? So fewer negative entities are being harvested than positive. Yes, the great majority of peoples will repeat the third density anyway. There's still not a lot of people that are going to be harvested. So how did Taras Bola, Genghis Khan, and Rasputin get harvested prior to harvest? That's an excellent question, Dawn. Because remember, all three of them, it said, were like able to access like the 8th density or something. It's the right and privilege and duty of those opening consciously to the gate of infinite intelligence to choose the manner of their leaving of the density. Those of negative orientation who so achieve the right duty most often choose to move forward in their learned teaching of service to self. So once you're open to this gate of the intelligent infinity, you can choose what to do. And negatively oriented people aren't going to stay around and help anybody else. They're going to move up. Then Dawn, of course, has another weird question. Is this the reason for spontaneous combustion? Really, Dawn? No. Why does that happen, spontaneous combustion? Okay, picture, if you will, a forest. One tree is struck by lightning, it burns. Lightning doesn't strike anywhere else. Everything else does not burn. This is random occurrences, which do not have to do with the entity, but with the window phenomenon of which we spoke. So it's just random entities? Correct. So I don't even really know what that means. Does that mean there's random entities coming in and catching people on fire? I don't even know. Okay. Am I understand that the harvest will occur in the year 2011, or will it spread? So this got me really confused because I thought I knew what was going on, and then Dawn asked this question, and it got me real confused because supposedly in 1981 it's the 75,000 year harvest, but then Dawn asks, because I went back and looked, Dawn asked if how long these distortions would take after the harvest for people to like, oh, my child is getting so loud. How long would the like distortions of us switching to a new cycle like cause problems? And Ra says about 30 years. So that's going to be 2011. But now Dawn's asking if the harvest is occurring in 2011, and Ra says it's an approximation. We have stated we have difficulty with your time space. This is appropriate, probable, possible time space nexus for harvest. Those who are not in incarnation at the time will be included in the harvest. So yeah, see, I was like, but wasn't that 1981? But there was a shift in 2011 because we were coming out of a difficult time of integrating into a new time, a new space, a new 4th density. And remember, Ra, if there's something Ra's not good at with, it's time and math. Ra's not good at explaining the time and the math. Not that Ra doesn't get the math, it's just that when it comes through, it gets kind of skewed, and that's where the biggest errors come up. So I feel like this is not accurate. Okay. If an entity wants to learn ways of service to others rather than service to self in the 3rd density, what are the best ways to do service to others? Constant attempt to seek and share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves radiating the essence of your heart. So attempting to seek and share love, being able to open yourself up to other people without hesitation, and radiating your own love and heart and self to others. To be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means the person must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This is different for each. There is no best, there's no generalization, nothing is known. So each person has to figure out their own way of seeking the intelligence within and their best way for themselves to help others. Everybody's going to be different. All right. In the book, this you guys know I can't pronounce that. OAHSPE. Remember that came up earlier in a previous session. It states that more than 50% of others okay, hold on a second. It states that if an individual is more than 50% for others, 50% service to others, and is less than 50% of service to self, he is harvestable. Is that correct? Yes, if the harvesting is to be for a positive fourth dimensional level. So you don't have to be 100% for other people. You just have to be at least half. Half of your total vibrational level has to be in the service of others. What's the percentage of the negative? 5% service to others and 95% service to self to approach totality. The negative path is quite difficult to obtain harvestability and requires great dedication. You gotta be a real asshole, people. Oh, you can only be 5% service to others. You have to be 95% service to self. That means you have to have a complete lack of consideration, compassion, empathy, etc., etc., etc. for anybody else to reach a harvestable limit to get to the fourth density. That's crazy. Why is the negative path so much more difficult? This is due to the distortion of the law of one, which indicates the gateway to intelligent infinity to be a gateway at the end of a straight, narrow path. To obtain 50% dedication to the welfare of others is as difficult as obtaining a grade 5 dedication to others. It's a sinkhole of indifference is between those two. So they're saying that 50% towards dedication to others in a service to other self is the same as 5% dedication to others and the self-service self. I'm assuming there are different levels of the fourth density. Correct. Each enters the subdensity which vibrates in accordance with the entity's understanding. How many levels do we have in third density? It's infinite. I heard there are 7 astral and 7 devachanic primary levels. So I've heard the term astral before. I had not heard of this one before. And they're both, I think, very much like a matter of your own interpretation. But I did look up like the definitions of those. And an astral refers to like a plane that is like next to us or above us. And a devachanic plane is referred to as a waiting place. Those are the basic, just general definitions, but either one of those could have their own interpretation personally, I think. You speak of more large distinctions and levels of your inner planes. So who inhabits the astral and who inhabits the devachanic planes? Entities inhabit the various planes due to their vibrational level. The astral plane varies from thought forms in the lower extremities to intelligent beings or enlightened beings who become dedicated to teach learning in the higher astral planes. So lower and higher. And I feel like what they're getting ready to say is what we've pretty much discovered about our own astral planes. In the devachanic planes, as you call them, are those whose vibrations are even more close to the primal distortions of love light. Beyond these planes, there are others. Our physical plane, are there 7 subplanes to what you call our physical plane? Correct, but it's difficult to understand. There are 7 subplanes of your mind, body, spirit complexes. You will discover the vibrational nature of these 7 planes as you pass through your experiential distortions, meeting other selves of the various level which correspond to the energy influx centers of the physical vehicle. The invisible or inner third density planes are inhabited by those who are not of body complex nature such as yours. That is, they do not collect about their spirit-mind complex as a chemical body. Nevertheless, these entities are divided in what you call an artificial dream within a dream into various levels. In the upper levels, desire to communicate knowledge back down to the outer planes of existence become less due to the intense learned teaching which occurs upon these levels. You can see I wrote a question mark because I don't know what the heck they're talking about. But there's sub-levels within our physical plane with entities that don't have a body, and they're divided into various levels, with the upper levels desiring to communicate back down, becoming less as they go up, which is interesting and weird. Then is it necessary to penetrate one plane at a time as you move from third density through these physical planes? Some penetrate several planes at one time and others penetrate slowly. Some in eagerness attempt to penetrate the higher planes before penetrating the energies of the so-called lower or more fundamental planes, and this causes an imbalance. You will find ill health to frequently be the result of subtle mismatch of energies in which some of the higher energy levels are being activated by the conscious attempts of the entity, while the entity has not penetrated the lower energy levels or subdensity of this density. What I understand of that is that if you're trying to go up too high, too fast, it can cause physical ailments. And I think to a lot of psychic people, mediums, they do have a lot of physical ailments or things that happen to them, or feeling unbalanced. And this might be why, because they're trying to penetrate too high up without making it through the lower levels first. But how do you not do that? I don't know. Is there a best way to meditate? No. How are reincarnations into the physical allocated as we near the end of the cycle? Entities wishing to obtain critical needed experience in order to become harvestable are incarnated with priority over those who will, without too much probable possible doubt, need to re-experience this density. So priority is given to those who need to re-experience it. How long has it been going on, this type of allocation? This has been going on since the first individual entity became conscious of its need to learn the lessons of this density. This was the beginning of what you call a seniority by vibration. What is that? The seniority by vibration is the preferential treatment which follows the ways of the law of one, which encourages harvestable individuals, each individual becoming aware of the time of harvest and the need on a self level to bend mind, body, and spirit towards the learn teaching of these lessons, is given priority in order that this entity may have the best possible chance of succeeding its attempt. Seniority by vibration. So it sounds like people that are aware of and willing to work towards becoming harvestable are given priority of being reincarnated. Okay, last little bit for this session, since it's already long as hell. What can they do for Carla? She needs to keep her feet warm. Me too, Carla. Me too. My feet are always cold. So that's the end of session 17. So let's go over what was in it, summarize it very quickly. This was a really, really long session, and it was a lot of information. So, we learned first that there's physical changes on the Earth, and we did see scientific data that shows that yes, there's been way more volcanic eruptions. And then next, there was the reference to the Tunguska crater. That was real interesting. After that, we learned that Albert Einstein was a real good guy who gave us some great information, and we screwed that up too. And then we went all the way through Jesus, his life, and what happened with him, talking about all the intricacies there, which I thought was really, really interesting. Anybody can heal if you got the right stuff going on. We learned the percentages of what makes you become harvestable for the positive and negative. And then we also learned about, what else? There was so much stuff. Subplanes of our own inner planes. And reincarnation. All of that in one session. Wow. Craziness, people. Crazy. All right. If you enjoyed this session, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, do it already. If you haven't subscribed already, do it now. Join in the discussion. What do you think about all this? What are your own experiences, concerns, comments, questions, etc.? Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another one. See you later. Bye.